Hi everyone, today's demo is going to show you how to make a beautiful V neckline using your knitting machine. Let's get started. So for a different perspective, I'm going to use a heavier weighted machine. This is the Brother KH260, and we're doing an all needles rib here. So you want your machine to be set to H3, that is needles in crossed position, and everything nice and neutral on your carriage. I like to push my needles into the D position, take my carriage across, and set everything up before casting on. Now here I'm also going to be casting on with a scrap yarn. Again, I feel that this makes the nicest, cleanest cast on possible. So if you're unsure about how I normally do a cast on, there are cast on videos in my YouTube channel. Also, if you don't know, I have an online course, everything you need to know for getting started and doing a bunch of different stitches on your knitting machine, including different cast on methods. So check out carolynferrero.com for that. Here I am inserting the comb and some weights to get me started. Now, on a heavier weight machine, sometimes you might need to actually use more than one weight. I like to distribute the two smaller weights and one in the center as well. Take your carriage back across, and then you're going to proceed with 3 rows of just the bottom carriage, the ribber carriage. So selecting my part buttons on my machine, 3 passages across. Then deselect that and knit all needles once again all the way back. Now you can take your ribber carriage and you can take it across to drop the work on the ribber carriage, and your cast on with scrap yarn is complete. When you are ready, go ahead and replace that with your good yarn. You can tie a knot to help you feed the working yarn through. Here I'm using a beautiful weighted alpaca yarn, and I will be just increasing the tension ever so slightly for the first passage. So all the way across all needles, knit. And something to pay attention to is if you're doing this cast on method, you'll see you want the loops to be nice and tight, but usually I run my finger across just to make sure that the scrap yarn has in fact dropped and it's not tangled in with your first row. So now for the cast on method, we're going to do 3 rows of tubular knitting here. So that is the top bed, followed by the bottom bed, and then 1 row of the top bed again. Now, if you were going to be knitting all needles at this point, you would place your carriage back to neutral setting and start knitting. And for the demonstration, and for this would be considered like a tank, I just do that for a nice small clean cast on. And so I'm going to transfer all my loops from my ribber carriage to the main needle bed now. This just gives a really small sleek cast on at the bottom of your stockinette stitch. So here you can see I'm transferring using my hand to help guide the needle forward and keeping the transfer tool on one hand and the other hand working the needles on the other side. This is really the easiest way, most efficient way. You can also use a 3-prong transfer tool if you feel really comfortable. So now that all the needles have been transferred, I'm changing my sinker plate, and we're just doing stockinette here. So make sure you increase your tension on average. For an average weighted yarn, it's about 4 or 5. And set your counter to 0 and begin. Now for the purposes of this demo, I'm doing about 30 rows here. If you are knitting a full top, you would definitely want to lengthen that. And everything is relative to your yarn in terms of how long you want it. I also have calculating your swatch tutorials. You can check out at carolynferrero.com in the course as well. So starting in the center now, we're going to be working one side and then the other. So I'm using the 3-prong transfer tool because it gives a really nice effect. You can see that beautiful fashioning. And then taking the 1 needle out of work. Now on the opposite side, you need to push all your needles into D position so that they hold. It's really important that you put your carriage on the hold in order for that side not to knit. In this tutorial, I am doing 2 rows and then transferring 1 needle. So this should work quite nicely if your yarn is quite similar to mine. 2 rows and then transferring 1 needle. We're moving across. The number of needles I have selected is going to allow about 10 at the end where I cast off. So it's about 30 needles on either side. Continue this way until you've got 10 needles left. The beauty of the 3-prong transfer tool or more is that when you're transferring even just 1 needle over, you have 2 loops that will intersect and double up, and so that's why you see that beautiful fashioning effect. If you're really struggling to move it over, chances are the tension on your machine is just a little bit too tight. So I highly recommend that you always do a test swatch with your good yarn and try different tensions to see which one looks the best. Right now it seems quite open, but you'll see when it comes off the machine, once it's steamed, it looks really nice. It's a great tension. So continue to work across and complete the one side. When that's done, cast off 10 needles and remove the machine from hold so you can now do the opposite side. Again, I'm transferring 1 needle with the 3-prong transfer tool. Now don't worry about that first row extra yarn. We're going to close it up at the end and clean finish it. If you're unsure about casting off methods, here I did a knit bind off. Again, there are some tutorials there for you to see. You can choose a cast off method that you're most comfortable with. Even a crochet cast off is quite nice. Here you can see the knit bind off with about 10 needles left. And this is quite a good method for a stockinette jersey. Just keep in mind here that there is minimal stretch with a knit bind off, and so if you are designing something where it needs a bit more wiggle room, I recommend a crochet cast off or loop through loop cast off method. And pull the end through. Here you can see it off the machine. Really nice. I'll take it to the table so you can have a look before it's quite steamed. We're going to remove that scrap yarn. So cut the last loop on the one end, and then all you need to do is pull your scrap yarn, the closest one to your work. And if you have cut the correct loop, again, the last loop on the scrap yarn on the opposite side, you should be able to just pull it off in one quick swipe here. So, how to clean finish the neckline? I'm going to show you using a needle. And you can see that it looks a little bit loose there. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually turn this over. And basically when you're finishing anything on a knit, you want to simulate the stitch of the knit. So here I am going to work the yarn back up in the same direction as the last row. Do this for about 3 or 4 rows. And then you need to create a closed knot. So working around and then back through, you will be able to close the work and make sure that the yarn doesn't unravel. So you can see here I've done it twice, going around and back to close the work. Now you can cut safely knowing that it will not come undone. Let's give it a steam and check it out. So here you can see that beautiful fashioning on either side. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on a V-neck neckline. Remember to subscribe to CF Studio and check out carolynferreira.com for more ways to use your knitting machine. I'll see you next time.